You are now listening to 1-900 Old Ladies, The Lost Art of Making Lefse, written by L. Lee Starr, narrated by the author. Post-production by Pinto Media. Chapter 17. There was really no question in the mind of any Bismarckian that Bubba Q's was the best rib joint in town. Actually, Bubba Q's might have arguably been considered one of the best barbecue joints in North Dakota. True, the absolute best barbecue had to be Southern, Texas, Kansas City, and then Chicago style in that order. But if one craved barbecue and one lived smack dab in the middle of prairie country, Bubba Q's was the place to be. Jim greeted Marge in the restaurant parking lot as she parked her Lincoln. He opened the door, trying to be gentlemanly, but still looking apologetic. He cowered a little and bit his lip as he extended a hand to help her out of the car. "You look lovely. Hard to believe you were up last night drinking and other things. No bags under your eyes." CoverGirl concealing stick. She accepted his hand and stepped out of the driver's seat. She dressed a little bit more casually today and wore a knee-length skirt and tunic. "Hey," she said slyly, "didn't you wear that outfit yesterday?" Jim looked down at his jacket, a little defensive. "Well, yeah, this is the same coat, but the pants are different." He politely took her hand and escorted her into the restaurant. "You see, Marge, the secret is that I never date the same woman twice. That way she never notices that I don't change my jacket." Marge voraciously gnawed at the last sauce-drenched spare rib until all that remained was a sinewy bone. She set it down on her plate of bare bones and smacked her lips. She sucked each finger clean by inserting each one up to the second knuckle in her open mouth. Then she wiped her hands on the napkin stuffed into the neckline of her tunic, lifted the napkin to her lips, wiped her mouth clean, and smiled again. Satisfied, she leaned back inside. Jim didn't order ribs. He sat across the booth from Marge, toying at a beef brisket with his fork. The beef brisket was actually better than the ribs at Bubba's, very tender and moist. He said little as she ate, but he studied her intently. "You really don't try to put on airs, do you?" he joked. "Life's too short without me having to complicate it with a lot of extra bullshit," she stated emphatically. "I like that philosophy, Marge, and I like you. You're a genuine human being." She made a stupid face. "As opposed to a fake one?" Jim chuckled. "No, I mean you're fresh. Really, I've never met anyone like you. Where are you from?" "Here. Where the hell else would I be from?" she snapped. "I mean, who comes here if they weren't already stuck here in the first place?" "No, I mean, you act different, but you look different. Everybody here is either pasty white or Indian. You're neither," Jim remarked. "Believe me, some of my younger brothers and sisters are almost albinos," she joked. Then she smiled. "I do know what you mean. My mother was French-Canadian and Mandan Indian. My Norwegian grandmother always told me I looked more like mother." "Your mom's still around?" "No, she died when I was 10. She was very hard-headed and free-spirited." "You must have inherited those qualities from her, but I mean that in a good way. I like that about you, Marge. But you don't talk like you're from here. You don't have that North Dakota accent." "I lived in Florida for so many years I kind of lost it. My younger sister has it bad, though. She never left the state. Been here all her life. She does that, yeah, huh, okie dokie, and don't you know stuff all the time. Pretty amusing. It's hard not to laugh." "Yeah?" "Her husband left her not long ago. After John died 6 months ago, I decided to move up here and take care of her. She's always been super sensitive, very fragile, totally not like me." "I'm convinced there's nobody like you, Marge." Jim looked deeply into her eyes and smiled. Marge felt her heart begin to pound forcefully. Say, Jim, are you feeling like another roll in the hay? My apartment's just down the road, he answered. Well, what the hell are we waiting for? Jim McDaniel had rented the same apartment since he moved to North Dakota 10 years ago. His apartment was one of many apartments in his large complex. Each apartment looked just like the next, with minor variations. Each building in the complex looked just like all the other buildings in the complex. It was conveniently close to his work, but it was admittedly small. It was a 2-bedroom, but he mainly used the second bedroom for storage. Jim chose to spend most of his extra cash enjoying the finer, consumable things in life. Things like a fine imported cigar. Due to his sizable monthly alimony checks to his ex-wife, he hadn't invested a great deal in furniture or aesthetics for his apartment. Neither of his 2 grown sons had any interest in visiting him in North Dakota, and he rarely invited friends or coworkers over. And he had never invited a woman over until now. So even after 10 years, his flat still looked like a bachelor pad. It was clean, but very Spartan in appearance. They had just completed another marathon round of lovemaking. Marge and Jim lay naked, nestled under the sheets. She rested her head in the crook of his arm while they talked. That was nice, Jim remarked. Just nice? Margie asked. Okay, great, he whispered to her. But you are pretty loud. Marge laughed. He added, I thought Mrs. Stevens was going to call the cops. Then at one point, I heard a dog or a wolf or something howling. Maybe he thought you were in pain. Marge laughed again. Then she paused for a moment before changing the subject. We talked about me earlier. What about you? What do you mean? What about me? He asked. How'd you get here? By car. No, smartass. What made you decide to move to friggin' North Dakota of all places? Well, it's a long story. He seemed reluctant to talk about it. I've got all night. It's just that it's not very interesting, Jim stated. I'm easily amused. Try me. Well, he started. I was born and raised in Atlanta. The son of a poor black family, she facetiously interrupted. She snickered. Sorry, I couldn't resist. I descended from a long line of Southern gentlemen who descended from Confederate soldiers. When I say Southern, I'm talking about diehard Southern men. You know, they'd go to the Civil War reenactments and proudly wear the Confederate gray. My granddaddy and his father were Klansmen. My parents lived in one of those beautiful antebellum style houses. Like Terra? Yeah, with the great columns and such. Well, when I graduated from high school, I went to college. I met my fiancée, Lila. She was very Southern Belle. You know, did the debutante thing and the finishing school garbage. Big hooped skirts with bustles? He chuckled and then continued. Anyway, you get the picture. So she pushed me to go to Emory University Medical School, which I wanted to do, don't get me wrong, but she wanted very badly to be married to a doctor? Uh-huh. So when I graduated and I did my residency, I got a job with the Atlanta coroner's office. I worked my ass off for 16 years. I hardly saw my 2 boys at all. Then you had a midlife crisis? Kind of. Sort of. Between 79 and about 81, I started having to do all these autopsies for the Atlanta child murder cases. You heard about them, right? You mean when all the black kids who were getting killed by that serial killer guy? Yeah. The guy's name was Wayne Williams. Well, I think maybe I had been a bit desensitized by all the violence before. I mean, there was a lot of shit that happened during my college years and early in my career with the civil rights movement. But having to see these 7, 10, 12, 14-year-old kids, knowing there was some crazy murderer out there just strangling the life out of them for no good reason. Oh, it was just too overwhelming. Everyone in Atlanta was going nuts. They wanted to know who to blame. They wanted answers. I was just doing my job. He shrugged his shoulders and continued. So I came home one night, late again, and I told Lila, I just couldn't take it anymore. It was just too much. And what did she say when you told her that? Margie asked. She said that if I didn't want to be a doctor anymore, she didn't want to be married to me. And she said that I should be grateful that at least those children weren't white. That would be bad. Can you believe that woman? What a heartless bitch. That's why you left her? Margie asked. That and the fact that she was screwing around behind my back. Marge laughed. But why here? She told me that she was going to take me for everything I had. And she did. She got custody of the boys. She got the house. She got the best divorce lawyer money could buy. She had her nails so deep into my balls, I wasn't ever going to be free of that bitch. I needed to move. I needed to get out of Atlanta and away from that hillbilly mentality. Anyway, I had several job offers at other coroner's offices. I picked the one that was as far away as possible, which paid as little as possible. I wanted to get away from her gold-digging claws, and I wanted to pay her as little alimony as possible to finance her harlot lifestyle. I moved up here in 82, and I've been here ever since. To be honest, when I first moved here, I was quite sure I had made a mistake. But your wagon wheel broke, so you stayed. Margie chuckled each time she rudely interrupted Jim's story. He was also slightly amused by her wit, but he continued his story. I remember driving to Bismarck. I had taken everything I managed to get out of the divorce, and I packed it in my Volvo. It was night, and it was summer. I remember driving down the road and thinking, everything is just so flat. I mean, really flat. So I saw this flashing red light in the distance. I kept driving toward it. I need to just get to that red light, I kept telling myself. I knew I would eventually get there. Wouldn't you know, it seemed like 2 hours before I finally stopped at that light. I thought to myself, oh my God, this is hell. Hell is North Dakota. So anyway, then November came. I had this little dinky apartment, and I'd go outside to smoke my cigar sometimes. I'd go outside and have this nice new winter coat, mind you, and it's freezing and windy outside. I think it was probably 30 below with the wind chill, I tell you. I thought my thin Southern boy blood was going to have to give up and run back to my frigid ex-wife with my tail between my legs. At least she would be warmer than North Dakota. But changed her mind. Don't tell me, another woman? He laughed. Don't interrupt. I'm trying to tell you this story. So I'm standing outside. Maybe it's only 20 below. I'm trying to light my cigar, and I look up in the sky, and there are these big, bright bursts of blue light. It was just amazing. It was like God was speaking to me or something, through the aurora borealis. It was like I never noticed them before. Jim's face had grown increasingly animated as he recounted his discovery of the northern lights. I guess that's when I decided that I would stay. You never found a serious girlfriend since your divorce? Honestly, Marge, I don't think I ever wanted one. I think I have just tried very hard to steer clear of the flame. Probably I just look for one-night stands so I can remain detached. No commitment, no heartbreak. What about you, Margie? What about me? She asked warily. What are you looking for in a relationship? Jim inquired. He clasped her hand in his, romantically weaving his fingers through hers. This conversation had gotten a little too serious for Marge. She found herself feeling a bit uncomfortable, so she decided to lighten the mood. Well, I don't mean to sound trite, Jim, but I was just looking for somebody to push the cobwebs out from between my legs.